نبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. قال الله في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما من دابة في الأرض ولا طائر يطير بجناحيه إلا أمثالكم ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء ثم إلى ربهم يحشرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says that there is no living creature and there is no flying bird except that its information or regarding it has been written within the Lawh Mahfuz, and indeed they shall be resurrected before their Lord. In this world, we aren't the only creatures living. In fact, countless other life forms and species live with us as well. Us human beings, the cats, the dogs, the birds, they themselves have millions of different species. Countless. We don't know up until today. We ourselves don't know exactly how many species of animals there are. We're constantly exploring and learning about new animal species that exist within the world. But unfortunately, nowadays within the world today, a very simple but dangerous concept is being taught to us. That everything that lives off of instinct and animal desire. The cat that you see walking by, whatever it does, is based on its instincts. The dog that barks sometimes, it's based on its instincts. There's no such thing as will, but instead everything that you have within your mind is programmed in your genetics and coded as instinct or animal desire. You have no will or say in anything. At the end of the day, you're simply purely just instinct and animal desire. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says that there isn't any animal that lived upon earth or on earth except that everything about it has been recorded. So animals are important enough to be recorded. And in fact and indeed, each and every single one of them will be resurrected for the day of judgment. So the question begs, are animals or us human beings or anything that lives simply just instinct or animal desire? And secondly, let's say animals are beings or creatures with a will, with intention, that aren't just strictly instinct and animal desire. How are they judged in the day of judgment? We shall begin, inshaAllah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. وما من دابة في الأرض ولا طائر يطير بجناحيه إلا أمثالكم ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء ثم إلى ربهم يحشرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. To illuminate your hearts and minds, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. It's interesting to first mention that within the past, old day Europe, there were actually trials and court hearings and judges and specific courthouse procedures that would be made for animals. In the past, you can see it's actually pretty well documented. It sounds weird, it sounds strange, but in the past, it was actually very common that courts would hold up times or periods in which they would strictly judge animals. You could see a pig one day coming up for blackmailing someone, for example. They had their own special lawyers. For example, there was a rooster one day, and the rooster laid an egg. Of course, the people who claimed he laid an egg weren't sure the rooster really claimed an egg, but they said that the rooster laid an egg, this is witchcraft. And so they brought him on court the next day, and they said the rooster is doing witchcraft, he should be judged because of it. Another account is when a pig, for example, was accused of killing another person. And so the court decided, well, we'll hang him up in human clothes and kill him that way, which would do a human. We'll hang him and let him die just like that. Another example is rats and locusts. They would be coming and ruining farming and harvest. And the court would have hearings They would go to the crop fields and they would say that locusts, you've done this, you've gone against the law, you have to come on court on this day, on this specific time, in this specific moment, we're going to judge you for it. It sounds weird, sounds strange, funny to be exact, but it's been pretty well recorded that in fact within history in Europe in the past the church and the court and the law and everything, they would actually account animals based on their actions. You would see a rooster come day, you would see a pig come one day. In fact, the lawyers were very respected too. If you're a lawyer, now if you're a lawyer for an animal, oh, you've got a special status now. There was a man by the name of Bartholomew. He was the lawyer of a few rats. And the court had told Bartholomew to call all the rats for court hearing. But Bartholomew was a smart man and he was actually very respected because of his act. He said that there are a lot of cats outside and my defendants are scared of being eaten by the cats, so I can't bring them for the court hearing. And so everyone applauded him and respected him. What a great defendant or lawyer this is. We don't have those kind of lawyers today, but in the past there were. Bartholomew was an example. In fact, animals in the past were beings or creatures that were also accounted to based on the actions that they did. If a pig were to, for example, maul you, a bear was supposed to slash you, they would deal with the animal the exact same way that they would do with an animal, with a human. Which begs the question as well. Nowadays, the entire concept or idea has changed. Now, we learn that animals work strictly based on instinct, based on animal desire. Nothing else. So no more judging animals anymore. It's funny, but no more judging any more animals. They're not at fault. In fact, we should let them be because they're strictly just instinct and animal desire. But when looking at the facts, it really doesn't make sense to completely cross off the list animals for having free will or their own intention or their own choices within their lives. How so? It's because the same exact concept, they apply to us humans as well. Anything that you do within your life, it's something that is coded within your genetics, coded within your brain. And so, for example, if I'm here talking like this, it's been coded in my genetics. I'm more persuaded to be doing something like this than to, for example, do engineering. The answer is really strange. They say that we humans, every living creature, is a being that works strictly off of instinct and animal desire. But it doesn't really make sense. How so? Because when looking at it, even though animals were on instinct, we don't judge them anymore. Why? Because they really don't have any say in it. So then why are we being judged anymore? Why do I have to go to court? It's not my problem, it's my genetics. You can't blame me for that. But then, something even more interesting comes up. Why do we even have laws to begin with? Who says I'm supposed to follow a law if I'm just strictly instinct and animal desire? Which has us understand that living beings, whether it be an animal or a human, they have the capacity to learn. Learning itself completely separates a creature from strictly instinctual to a being that can learn and has its own choice in the making. For example, a wild horse. Someone comes and tames the wild horse. If the wild horse was just instinctual, it would stay wild. It would be rampaging all over the man who tried to come and tame it. But the man was able to tame it. Dogs themselves, we keep them as pets. In fact, they used to be wolves, but they've learned to be tamed, take care of us, be trained. Another example, for example, Prophet Solomon and the ants. When Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, or Prophet Sulaiman, along with his companions, had marched, they were going to pass by ants' territory. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَحُشِرَ لِسُلَيْمَانَ جُنُودُهُ مِنَ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ وَالطَّيْرِ فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. Prophet Solomon or Prophet Sulaiman, along with his companions of humankind, of jinns, of birds, they had all gathered and they were all marching. حتى إذا أتوا على واد النمل وقالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. In this story, and the way the ant territory, which was about to be passed by the Prophet Sulaiman and his companions of jinn, of ants, of birds, the ants of the territory had called out to every other ant as well to warn them that Sulaiman's coming, Solomon's coming, watch out, be careful, they're going to step over you, they're going to crush you, and they won't know, they won't notice. We're tiny ants. And so what's even more interesting is that in the book of Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, the Imam Ridha alayhi salam, when hearing this verse, was laughing. How so? The companions asked him, "Oh Imam Ridha, what's so interesting about this verse that's got you laughing like this?" He said that, in fact, Prophet Sulaiman heard the ant saying this. He heard the ant warning all his other ant friends that Prophet Sulaiman is passing by, watch out, go back into your holes, go back into the dirt, make sure you don't get crushed. Prophet Sulaiman then talked to the ant and asked him, why are you so scared? Do you not know that I'm the Prophet of Allah? I'm the Prophet of mercy? I wouldn't crush you. And so the ant replied, said, sure, yeah, I understand this, but I'm scared if I look up, I'll be looking at the wrong things. In the past, they would be wearing garments similar to Arabic clothing, but under that, they wouldn't be wearing pants. So the ant was embarrassed. He said, I don't want to look up and see something that I'm not supposed to be looking at. So instead, I'm calling everyone to go back inside their homes. It's a pretty interesting story. The Imam Rida alayhi salam was also fascinated by it. When we look at these examples, a dog can learn and be trained. A wild beast can be tamed. An ant is able to understand within the Quran that there are people passing by, they need to hide, or they have to be very humble and modest to not look at the wrong things. Then we come to understand that the idea that living things are just instinctual and only work by animal desire does not really work well. It doesn't really make sense. So then we go on to the next question, the next part. Okay, let's say for sure animals do, and us human beings all alike, we do have a will, we do have understanding, we do have a cognitive mind, we are able to understand, think. So then how does it make sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, in the verse which was recited in the beginning, resurrects all these animals? And how exactly will they be judged? To begin, there is a lot of arguments on this topic. Multiple scholars aren't sure whether, actually not all the scholars agree on one opinion, that in fact at the day of judgment all animals will be judged. We all agree, yes, at the day of judgment animals will be resurrected before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will be called out for what they have done, but after that we aren't so sure whether they're going to be going to heaven or not. So in the day of judgment, in the verse which was recited in the beginning, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنَّهُمْ لِرَبِّهِمْ يُحْشَرُونَ, that they shall be resurrected before their Lord, that means that on the day of judgment, on the plains or on the ground, they will be judged based on everything to display Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fairness and justice. But after that, they will be turned to dust and they will disintegrate. Which is why when we look in the Quran, for example, when the disbelievers are called out for what they have done or disbelieved or the wrong they have done, they say that Ya laytana kunna turaba, for example, in the context. They say that, oh, how we wish we were dirt, just like the animals that were judged. So in the day of judgment, Tafsir al-Mizan and many other commentations, they come to say that on the day of judgment, animals will be resurrected. They did have some will and they did have some amount of option and choice. So if, for example, if one goat hit another goat with its horn, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge him on that for every tiny speck or detail. And on this day and in this event, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing this to display how fair and just He is, His system of justice. But after that, they will be turned into dust and they will completely disappear from existence. And hence, some of the disbelievers on the day of judgment, they will say that, oh, how we wish we were also dust, just like the animals. We're going to be going to hell, but good for them, they've completely disappeared. They're not going to be facing that. On the other hand, we do have some scholars who believe that although Animals, they do not have that level of understanding, that level of free will and cognitive ability to really be put in hell or heaven. Some of them will be going to heaven or hell. They cite or they narrate that three animals from the Imam Rida alayhi salam will be going to heaven. One of them being the donkey that Bal'am Ba'ura was riding on to curse Prophet Moses alayhi salam. It's a popular story. There was a man by the name of Bal'am Ba'ura. He wanted to go and curse the Prophet Moses and bring him down. But then the donkey that he was riding on that was aiding him towards the cliff or the mountain stopped and said, "You're trying to curse the Prophet of Allah. I won't let you do so. You can go, but I won't be the one helping you." And hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this donkey among the animals that go to paradise. Another one of them is the guard dog that was for the Ashab Kahf, that took care of them for the few thousands of years, some say, while they were within the mountain residing and seeking refuge from the disbelievers of their time. Some even say that the big fish that had swallowed Prophet Sulaiman will also be among the animals that are in heaven or paradise. But this is a argumentative topic that no one really has a concrete idea on. But we can understand today that in fact, on the day of judgment, every single animal will be brought before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if there's a cat that keeps defecating on your lawn, you can go and complain about him on the day of judgment, no problem. Looking at it carefully, we understand that us human beings and living beings in general, we aren't strictly living off of instinctual habits or animal desire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Naml has taught us that in fact the ants are able to tell when there are people crossing by so that they may be seeking refuge within their own homes. The ants themselves understand. The wild beasts themselves can be tamed. Dogs or pets can be trained. So we learn that in fact an animal is not a being that is completely instinctual. It applies to us as well. We aren't instinctual as well. And so hence, dear brothers and sisters, we look in the verse which is recited in the beginning once more time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا طَائِرٍ يَطِيرُ بِجَنَاحَيْهِ إِلَّا أُمَمٌ أَمْثَالَكُمْ مَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ ثُمَّ إِلَى رَبِّهِمْ يُحْشَرُونَ. There is no being, there is no living creature on this world except that whatever that is about it is recorded, and in fact they will be resurrected before their Lord, teaching us that in fact there is no more justice than that justice which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides. Whether animals, they go to heaven or they don't, we understand that they will be resurrected for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to display that I will judge based on every single tiny thing that you do within your lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and success of becoming among the true shahs of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. And may we be all alim and amil to the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.